Good morning, everyone. This is Nathaniel Lee with Legal Issues of the Day. I'd like to tell everybody that this is the ultimate weekend where we celebrate the resurrection of Jesus Christ. It's an important holiday weekend because of the historical nature of our salvation as Christians. So we'd like to have a special tribute, and I hope everybody enjoy their Easter services tomorrow. I certainly hope that we plan to go as always. But there has been so many legal issues. We have a superstar panel with attorney Marlon Price going to be talking about these issues. There's so many crazy things going on until I just thought it was necessary to cover some of these issues. What has been lost in the dialogue, particular that I'm concerned about, is this attack on law firms. And the attack on law firms.
This is Tamar and Miss E. All new Wednesday night at 9 on Clio
these
TV.
Prestigious law firms.
A new career offers new beginnings and unlimited opportunities at Eskenazi Health. Our patients are treated with compassion and skill, and Eskenazi Health is looking for professionals who share our mission. Enjoy excellent benefits and competitive pay. Learn more at eskenazihealth.edu/careers.
The 2025 Tom Joyner Foundation Fantastic Voyage sails on October 19th through the 20th.
Okay, now that we're back on the air again, for the folks, sorry for the mix-up. The station got a little late start today, but I have with me attorney Marlon Primes, but there were some important issues that have been resonating in our legal system, and I need to cover some of these because I think that most Americans don't realize how significant a problem it is for Black Americans as to what the Trump administration is doing. Well, recently, we see these prestigious law firms, at least I used to think they were prestigious until they folded this shockingly to a threat from Trump, the president of the United States. And so these law firms are doing something that I think is disastrous for the Black community. The law firms that settled the agreement with Donald Trump, they've pledged $940 million in legal services. And so these legal services, he will be able to direct them to represent certain issues for free. Now, what is he doing that is so bad for the Black community? Let's talk about this. Well, first of all, they want details on the diversity program for the top 20 law firms. And they're attacking things such as the law firm's ability to generate business with other Black attorneys or Black customers. So what they're doing is that they want the law firm to disclose their diversity targets. In other words, what business requires staffing. Now, what most people don't realize, the legal profession is probably the most segregated profession there is in terms of diversity and issues to start with. In our state, for example, we started the process of desegregating law firms in 1987. So we have a short history of the segregation in the law industry. And so what this administration is doing, they want to roll back the gains that were made in the last 20 years. It's not enough that you have so few in the legal profession that enjoy the firm, and they want to reduce that number along with the opportunity for Blacks to engage in the process. So I'm concerned about this, Marlon, that we have this attack on the modest gains we made. And like we saw in Indiana, for example, the Indiana Law School in Bloomington that would traditionally admit 30 or 40 Blacks, only admitted one Black law student in this class. It's shocking in terms of the decline in the opportunity for Blacks in our country that they're doing. It's just overt racial bigotry toward Black Americans, it appears.
Yeah, I'm equally concerned. And I think that, your listeners should be concerned as well. You're talking about almost $1 billion in free legal work. And so one of the things that has been spoken, not quietly, but the very conservative movement has, always sought to replicate many of the more progressive movements in terms of, legal services, whether it be the ACLU, whether it be, Southern Christian, the Poverty Center, NAACP, and have a series of lawyers that are able to advocate for progressive positions. And so you see the advent of First American Legal and other organizations that were designed to kind of be the conservative counterweight to all that. So, you have people that are pushing for that. Now, at the same time, you get all these reinforcements that you're going to get, free almost $1 billion in legal work. So the question you raise is, how is that money going to be spent? What type of causes? Is it going to be to enforce many of these edicts that the Equal Employment Opportunity Commission has issued as it relates to, even having a minority group, an employee group, can be deemed to be, discriminatory in the violation of the Civil Rights Act. Are these individuals going to, be filing suits as it relates to our environmental laws, separation of church and state, Second Amendment issues? So, that's going to be a really interesting issue. I think the other point that you raised is that the legal profession has been one of the most conservative in our country in terms of diversity as relates to partners, equity partners, and associates. And so, what this administration has done is that it has asked for data, and it appears that the next step they're trying to do is try to say that, hey, there are diversity hires and this should, be stopped. Now, you and I have both been practicing for decades, and we know that, not only in Indianapolis, but all throughout the country, there's not that many of us that are in the associate ranks, that are in the partner ranks or the equity partner ranks. So I think this will be a potential chilling effect on firms that want to diversify and make sure that those that are doing the legal work represents client bases and represents the diverse nature of our country. So it will be interesting to see how that pans its way out.
What I'm concerned about, though, is these firms capitulated to what is so wrong legally, morally, and otherwise. For example, in this agreement, they said that the bill announced back on March 28th, it pledged it would not engage in illegal DEI discrimination and preferences. So now they're making the fact that you're trying to make a fair playing field fair, they're saying is illegal. So this is crazy stuff that basically we're seeing what it appears to be like a not conservative, but a basically racial bigoted administration saying that a racial fairness is wrong in America anymore. It's just crazy stuff. And I think that people don't realize the consequence of this. If they're saying that they can attack racial fairness and that saying racial fairness is illegal, what's next? This is a sad day in American politics that people are not outrightly outraged by. I saw today, Marlon, that Reverend Sharp is fighting back with stores such as Target, right? I saw that the CEO of Target goes to New York to meet with them. But I think that we got to be a little bit more proactive. I saw hundreds of thousands of people protesting the layoff of federal workers and things like that. And these people were stunned because they thought that these layoff of these adverse policies will only affect, I guess, minorities and immigrants. But apparently they were upset because it affected them also. And I think that I was sad to see that they waited until then. It seems like that folks weren't concerned that it was okay to discriminate against Black folks. Maybe some people were mildly upset, but they weren't protesting. Now, when it affects them, they say, well, this is wrong. And I'm thinking, okay, so it's okay to attack a minority group that were slaves in this country that discriminated against, or Jim Crow laws. And it's okay for them to be attacked, but now you're upset because he's attacking your economic prosperity. And I think that as America works best because we are a diverse nation. We rely on all these group of people to make this the greatest nation in the world. If we continue to attack each other like that, what separates us from making us American exceptionalism? I don't understand why people don't understand that we need these diverse in this country in order to be successful.
Yeah, I couldn't agree with you more. You don't want to wait until your rights are impacted. That's why it's important that we read the news, we follow the news, we make sure that we pay attention to who is in office, what their platforms are, because you're absolutely right. If they're taking back the rights of one group, hey, all of us could be next. And that kind of almost segues to, what some of the courts are saying. The Fourth Circuit basically had a very stinging rebuke of this administration as relates to that very point. The administration indicated that, hey, they had mistakenly deported an individual and that they could do nothing about it. And, a Reagan appointee who was on the 3-judge panel basically said this should be shocking to not only the judicial system, but to us all. So to your point, Nathaniel, we can't wait till something comes on our particular doorstep. The price of democracy is making sure that we're watching, we're looking, we're speaking out, and we're making sure that those hard-fought rights still are in existence, not only for us, but for those in the future.
Well, there's something I want the audience to know. The local bar association called the Marion County Bar Association, they were formed in 1925. And the Black Bar Association was formed because they weren't permitted membership in the White Bar Association. And so the National Bar and the Marion County Bar were both formed in 1925. And we'll be hosting our centennial celebration this coming week. But here's an issue, Marlon, that's critical. The American Bar Association, the largest bar association on the planet, also discriminated against Blacks and didn't allow admission until the 1950s. So now here's what really was profound legal news that went unnoticed. The Trump administration will not allow their attorneys to attend the American Bar Association convention. And they're attacking the American Bar Association because they have scholarships to allow people to attend their program and things like that. They also attack the law firm saying that had diversity program and things like that, diversity scholarships. And so I don't think people realize how significant this is. So we have an administration saying that you can't do anything to promote diversity in educational process and employment. Although, if you look at a nation's most prestigious schools and the master's and doctoral program, African America is such a small percentage. Marlon, when I went to Purdue graduation, my son and daughter both got their MBAs at Purdue. When I would look at the people that were getting their advanced degrees, I could count the Black students that got their PhDs and their master's degrees on my fingers. There were thousands of people graduating, but so few Black students getting their master's in business administration or their doctoral degrees at Purdue. And so what they're trying to do is almost like that 4 or 5 that got their advanced degree, what they want to be 0. I mean, this is, I don't understand that most Black Americans don't understand how severe these policies are. I just think that it's so many things that's hitting us at the same time that we don't appreciate the gravity and the consequence of this attack on diversity and things like that.
I think you're absolutely right that one of the things that the administration has done is try to not only attack what's going on now, but really attack our understanding of history. And on prior shows, we've talked about the Smithsonian and different threats regarding how history has been framed. But you're absolutely right that the American Bar Association has a very challenging history. In fact, I wrote about the fact that a number of years ago, prior to the American Bar Association allowing African Americans to join, there was an assistant U.S. attorney, a position that I held for 30 years, that applied for membership in the ABA and was denied. And the ABA was very blunt about the rationale and saying that, hey, we do not admit African Americans. You're obviously very well qualified, but you cannot be admitted. So to think, wrap your head around the fact that, hey, the 1950s was not that long ago, and given that historical backdrop, you're not going to allow the organization to have a broad outreach to give all different races, colors, creeds, sexes opportunity to practice law. So it's very unfortunate, and I agree with you that it's very concerning. Now, the next issue you bring up that I think is really important as well is that the administration has indicated that they're not going to allow their attorneys to attend American Bar Association meetings, and this is significant because a lot of these meetings of not only the ABA, American Bar Association, but the NBA and National Bar Association and other entities, they have, summer, they meet typically in the summer. They have seminars where you talk about important issues of the day. The administration comes and talks about policies and procedures and gets feedback and interaction with people that may have a different view. And to deny your own attorneys that opportunity to learn from other people and to be able to defend what you're doing is certainly disconcerting. Because it should be, a discussion. It should be a presentation in terms of your approach. And if your approach is meritorious, you should be able to defend it with a group of lawyers that are trained in the law and understand that particular area of expertise. So I think it's a step backwards in my view, and I hope it's something that will be reversed.
Well, one of the tragic things that also happened this week, there were so many crazy things going on until it was sad to see some of the things that occurred, but I was happy at the response. The administration went after the world's most prestigious university, in my mind, Harvard University. And so they decided that they wanted to tell Harvard who they could hire, what they could teach, and who they could admit to the university. Harvard, of course, has a $62 billion endowment, but those endowments are for specific things. So it's a wealthy university, but by the same token, they've been in the education business by, I don't know, a couple of centuries, it seemed like. But they got the world's most prestigious law school. They got medical school. They got the prestigious MBA program. So their academic program was second to none. And they have brilliant people there. And so the president of the United States, who started a university that they determined was just a big fraudulent scheme, decided to tell them who they could hire. And it was encouraging to see that Harvard struck back and say, well, hell no, you can't tell us who to hire, what to teach, and who to admit. It was crazy stuff. I was happy to see that finally somebody standing up to the schoolyard bully, finally.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. Harvard University, was founded, before the nation was founded, and they not only have great programs, but they've been a magnet for the best and the brightest students, not only in the United States, but around the world. And one of the things that Harvard should be proud about is that we all remember the Bakke decision And the court, basically, the United States Supreme Court, indicated that there could not be specific a number of seats reserved for African Americans, but the majority opinion basically indicated that diversity can be a factor that universities use in making the determination of who is going to be in those seats and going to be able to attend the university under the guise that, hey, we're all going to benefit from getting perspectives from people from different backgrounds, whether from Ohio or Indiana or Louisiana. It's all going to be something that's going to be beneficial. Unfortunately, the Supreme Court, overturned that rationale, recently and said that, hey, you can't even use diversity. So I say that to suggest that, not only has Harvard, been fighting now, but they fought previously, and that was a prior model that we used. Now, one thing I think is really interesting as it relates to this particular dispute, it really shows, a conflict that really I don't think, it has been as widely reported as it should be. What the administration basically indicated is a couple of things. First, they indicated that they wanted the university, Harvard, to get rid of all their diversity, equity, and inclusion programs. And the problem with that, that has been, adjudicated in federal courts and federal appeals courts, in the First Circuit and also in the 11th Circuit, because it's so vague. It's hard to really understand, what they're trying to prohibit. So that fight is ongoing. But I think the other interesting thing about Harvard University is it really kind of showed the fact that the administration sent a letter to Harvard. And on one hand, they indicated that, hey, we want you to get rid of, diversity, equity, and inclusion programs. Then on the other, then they sent a subsequent letter indicating that they want to do a litmus test to see where, people, faculty and students, what their ideology is, and take affirmative steps to make sure that, there's balance there. So you can't say on one hand, hey, it's a total meritocracy, don't consider anything. But on the other hand, okay, we want you to tip the scales and make sure that, there are people that are being admitted that, think and have the ideology of the current administration. So I think Harvard is right. They took a stand that Georgetown University, as many of you remember, the law school, which is my alma mater, took. They indicated that it's a bridge too far for the government to tell a private university, what to teach, how to teach it. So I think, Harvard is correct to stand up. Now, it will be interesting because the administration has made a lot of threats about challenging their tax-exempt status. That will have a big impact on their endowment, because it will impact, how that money is taxed. Individuals will want to make donations to that. So this is going to be a very large battle, and it will be interesting to see how it plays out. But thankfully, we do have some precedent. There was a case that was just argued recently in the First Circuit regarding this same type of rule that we're seeing around the country, the saying that you cannot have diversity, equity, and inclusion. The First Circuit was, in question, was saying, well, hey, this is unconstitutionally vague. And they showed great skepticism at that rules. And we already talked previously on this show that Judge Walker out of Florida raised the same issues as relates to the Stop Woke Act. But all of these are similar acts that are being, that are going from one state to another. And now they're finally at the federal level, now that we have a change in administration. So again, it will be interesting to see how these cases are, going to be adjudicated within our federal courts. And it will be interesting to see, what happens in this dispute with Harvard University and the administration.
Now, there's something that you said that was very important, and it triggered my mind that Harvard University was the first college formed in America back in 1636. So that is something that most people probably didn't know. So the first university, the most academically sound university on the planet, get attacked by the president. And this thing about this tax exempt status, Marlon, bothered me because one of the things that I did as part of my law school curriculum, I wrote a senior paper on the, subchapter E of the tax code had to do with Bob Jones University. Bob Jones University was in a private university, and they felt that they could enforce Jim Crow type laws by not denying Black to attend the university. And so it was a significant Supreme Court decision. This was in 1983, by the way. This is not something in the 50s or the 60s. This was in the 80s. And at that time, the Justice Department had a similar view. They felt that they could deny Bob Jones University tax exempt status because they excluded Blacks. So now we're seeing an opposite approach. They're trying to say that Harvard can't have diversity and inclusion type programs at the university, and they have to have certain type of faculty members. I guess they're trying to get white supremacists to teach at Harvard. I mean, it's insulting, the whole idea of what they're advocating. But just think about that. In less than 50 years, less than 40 some odd years, we're saying 42 years, we're saying now, I guess they're saying the Bob Jones University decision was wrong. It was an 8-1 Supreme Court decision that denied them tax exempt status because they're racist. Now we're just doing the opposite. And so folks that listen out there, these are serious times in America. And it tells you how important the last election was, that we're getting a total change. It's not just with these crazy tax things, which may be a distraction, but they're trying to change the entire process of how we live in America. What's next? Were they going to attack Loving versus Virginia, interracial marriages? Where did they stop with this crazy stuff, Marla? I mean, where are we headed?
Yes. I mean, certainly there are, storm clouds ahead. But it just really kind of, reminds me, remember the conversation that you heard in barbershops and churches, people were, rightly frustrated. And, particularly people of color were asking questions. Hey, does it matter anyway? Whether I vote for, Biden, or whether I vote for Trump, or whether I vote for, Vice President Harris. And I think we're saying that, hey, elections do matter. And so I think one of the things that we want to do in terms of being proactive is that, this is just a small example of why it's really important for all of us to be, politically engaged, not only at the federal level during presidential elections, but you also need to be active in off-year elections. We need to, register people to vote. You need to get, active in your state elections, governor's elections. Those are important in terms of, how the electoral map is going to be allocated. And those are things that we really need to get the word out about. And in addition, it's really important to indicate that, hey, I certainly advocate for individuals exercising their First Amendment rights to go ahead and protest. And there's a number of protests going on today throughout the country in various cities. But what's important for people to understand is that, yes, protest, but also make sure that you're registered to vote. It's really, really important. Now, to your question as it relates to Bob Jones University, Bob Jones University is totally different from Harvard University. You're absolutely right. They had a clear discriminatory policy. And, what Harvard is doing is, following what was existing Supreme Court precedent, and, then adjusting to the new Supreme Court precedent that, making sure that, individuals are adequately educated, following the existing laws. So it's not a fair analogy for someone to say, hey, someone discriminating, a university discriminating is on par with someone that's trying to alleviate, the history of discrimination that we've talked about on this show repeatedly. So it's something that we need to really educate people about. But unfortunately, people have short memories. Our mainstream media, a lot of those, publications in your major cities and also in your, throughout the country, you're seeing, newspapers and radio stations. You're seeing financial problems. And as a consequence, you're not really having a diversity of viewpoint. So it's really important to make sure, people are getting accurate information from a variety of sources, whether it be the Washington Post, the New York Times, also, viewing conservative media as well to get a fair perspective. So I think those are things that we're going to have to really, think about. And it'll be interesting to see, how these cases are adjudicated, especially issues as relates to Harvard University and this comparison between, Bob Jones University, which, we believe is an inappropriate analogy.
Hey, Marla, one of the things is that when I walk across the city, I run into people all the time that recognize me, they engage in conversation. I ran into a federal employee this week, and the federal workers, unfortunately, so many are losing their job, but they're terrified. I mean, these folks, they dedicate their career, they're dedicated employees, they're trying to do the best for the American people. They're highly skilled, highly educated folks, and they're losing their job just indiscriminately, just with a hatchet. They come to work one day and get locked out of their place. What can be done? I mean, this is getting sickening to me to see so many hardworking individuals for our country losing their job. It's mind-blowing to me that they could just be so inconsiderate to these dedicated employees.
And I agree. I was a federal employee, as many of you all know, for more than 30 years, and there's a lot of people there that very hardworking, dedicated public servants. They don't make as much as individuals in the private sector, and I generally think that they try to do the right thing. And I think the audience needs to understand that there's a reason why we have the Civil Service Reform Act. That you have to have a reason for firing somebody. You can't fire a federal employee for political reasons, because in the late 1800s, there was a president, Garfield, who was an Ohio president, and he was buried not far from where I live. And he was assassinated because, the alleged assassin indicated that he did not get a federal job. And what was happening before that time period, there was the notion of to the victor goes the spoils. And what that was basically used to say is that when a new president came into office, that president would appoint everybody, from secretaries to garbage men, all the way up. And the problem with that is that there were people in those positions that did not have any aptitude. You might be, regulating mine safety and had no, idea, or chemicals, or a variety of different things. So as a result of that, you have the Pendleton Act that was passed to say, hey, look, this is not good for our country, because if you have employees that are in important positions, particularly regarding health and safety, and then there becomes so you don't have somebody that knows what they're doing, a lot of people can be harmed. The other issue is that if you have a person in a federal job, you don't want that person thinking about hey, their next job during a presidential election year, for fear that everybody's going to be fired. So those rules are in place for a reason. And the other thing I just want to disabuse everybody of is this whole notion that, hey, you can't fire a federal employee and there needed to be reform. No, that's not true. The only thing that you have to do is you have to document it. You have to have proof of it. And and federal employees, long before this administration got into office, were fired if they did not do their job. But you just could not fire somebody for a political reason or just a made-up reason or a reason that, as we know in the law, we call pretextual, that really has no basis in law or fact. So it's something that we have to watch closely, and it kind of goes to your earlier point that we can't wait to this, a misdeed comes directly to your steps. You have to be concerned about it now because, these discharges can have an impact on all of us and do have an impact on all of us. These are individuals that, that work in federal jobs. They buy cars, they, hire lawyers, they hire accountants, they, send their kids to college. They're part of the economies of all these communities. And so this, can take its toll. But it's something that I think, there needs to be more education about. There's a lot of misinformation out there. And it's just really unfortunate that instead of a scalpel, to rid the federal government of people that aren't doing their job, because I think you have that in any job, whether it's public sector, private sector, they're just, taking a whole chainsaw approach and just sweeping, everybody out of the office, a large swath of people, saying they're terminating them for cause when they got, a good evaluation. So it's something that we all need to be concerned about.
Well, okay. I don't know that labor and employment law, but man, it seemed like to me that there is an administrative process that these employees can go through. And tell me about that. I mean, obviously they're just firing people that have outstanding reviews. So what is the administrative process for these people to get their job back? This is what the gentleman asked me. I said, I would have to ask you about this.
Right. Well, you have to go through the Merit System Protection Board. All right. And then there's something called the Office of Special Counsel. The Office of Special Counsel deals with terminations that are done for political reasons. And the problem is that, this administration fired a lot of those watchdog groups before they got in, as they were coming into office. So, that's certainly problematic. The other thing that you want to look at is something called the Merit System Protections Board, and they adjudicate claims as it relates to misconduct, firing of federal employees. And again, federal employees can be fired all the time, but you just have to go through the process. There has to be notice. There has to be a hearing. You have to specifically, identify, hey, what did they do wrong? Is it something that was in their performance plan? So for example, the way the process works is that you sit down with your supervisor, you have a performance plan that talks about the critical elements of your job. Here's what you are to do. And then you sign that. Then the federal government does a very good job in making sure that those core elements that you receive the proper training. So if someone wants to fire you for cause that you are not, doing this assigned job that's listed in your performance plan, they have to go through the process. They have to, indicate in writing, what you've done wrong, give you the opportunity to be heard. And ultimately, those issues are decided by the Merit System Protections Board. And that's very a lot more difficult to fire somebody for cause. Now, what often you see, it's easier to fire somebody for misconduct. So that's something that can happen as well. But I just want to disabuse your audience and the public in general, this whole notion that you can't, without Trump and these harsh tactics, federal employees cannot be held accountable. That's not true. All you have to do is identify, hey, specifically what they've done wrong. it just can't be something that's illusory. It has to be something that's on their performance plan, something they've done wrong, or identifying specific misconduct.
Yup. Okay.
But
Wash face, brush teeth, moisturize your hair.
but this is the problem that these folks are facing. The fired workers, federal workers, don't have the money to go out and hire lawyers like yourself. And so what are they going to do? I mean, because they're dealing with now the president got a $1 billion in free legal services from these prestigious law firms. They got the Department of Justice apparently it's turned upside down in terms of what justice is. I mean, what are these workers going to do? I mean, they can't afford to go out and hire skilled lawyers to represent them in their pursuit to get their jobs back. If they get terminated, where are they going to get money from?
Correct. Right. Because the issue is the money flow is going to be, is not going to be there to pay an attorney. And then you have to worry about, hey, your mortgage, if you have a child in school, car payments, things of that sort. So yeah, it can be very, very challenging. So it's something that we're going to have to address as a legal profession. I know, we're both members of the National Bar Association, which, we alluded to earlier. African Americans were not allowed to join the American Bar Association. The National Bar Association was founded. So I think it's going to be incumbent upon, the national bar, the national level, and also at our local level of providing seminars for our people to let them know that, hey, here are your rights. Here's how you can fight. I think, what we're going to have to do is just try to bridge the gap. This is a very esoteric area. It's not a general area. There's a lot of deadlines and that you have to meet and waive your rights. So you definitely need to get somebody that's well-versed in this particular area. So I think one of the things we're going to have to do as a legal profession is understand that, hey, this is certainly problematic. The Pendleton Act that I mentioned, the Merit System Protection Act, the Career Services Reform Act, all of those things were put in place for a reason. And if we're not careful, we could lose those protections, and we can have the chaos that we saw, in the 1800s. And we don't want to go to that. But in answer to your question, they're just going to have to, find attorneys, look online, the National Bar Association. There's top 100 Black lawyers. They have listings that I think you can use to, see who can represent you in these particular types of issues. But I think it's important to just get on the phone, get on the internet, and find attorneys that specialize in this particular area.
Okay, Carl, you have a question or comment for us today. Go ahead.
Hello?
Yeah, you got a
Brother Nate, all right, Brother Imhotep here. Thank you for taking my call. And even with, I guess, according to the attorney speaking, they can't even take advantage of the EAP, which we have at my organization. They can't even take advantage of the EAP, which does offer legal services, because they've been, it's been usurped by Trump and the Department of Justice. That's great. That's unfathomable. I called you all. Two things that really disturbed me: the stay from John Roberts on it wasn't the El Salvador case. John Roberts, they just had a stay on one of the Trump issues. I think it could have been DEI for schools, for public schools. Go back and look at that. Then also the birthright citizenship case. Trump loudly in the Oval Office this week. Oh, that just applied to slaves. So I was talking to some coworkers the other day. Do you know the 13th Amendment, was it 1866? Am I correct, attorneys? 1866, the 13th Amendment? Correct?
I have to look it up. I don't remember what
I think it was 1860, 1870. Reconstruction, 13th, 14th, 15th Amendment? Okay. Do you know Sally Hemings and all of them that was children from Thomas Jefferson? If you go by the 13th Amendment when it was signed, was that retroactive to people born before then? That was a question I wanted to know. Is the people that's the descendants of slaves, like Sally Hemings and all of them born to Thomas Jefferson, who have fought cases in the past to try to get Jefferson either through some type of lineage or something like that, they're not considered citizens because the 13th Amendment was not signed when they were born. That's a question there. And then the second thing that really irked me about Trump in the White House this week, he's got the president of El Salvador in the White House, and he lets the president of El Salvador dictate the terms of an American citizen being returned back to this country. And I thought that was just horrible. If anything, the president of El Salvador should have been here negotiating the return, and Trump should have been negotiating the return. But instead, this man sitting there laughing and giggling and thumbing his nose at the Supreme Court's 9-0 decision and saying, no, I'm not going to send the gentleman back either. I just thought that was really horrible. And Pam Bondi needs to be removed. It's really a shame that we have. So she can't even be brought up on ethics complaints because the people you would go to, she runs. Is that how that goes? Because she's thoroughly unethical in her duties that performing as an attorney. She's still an attorney. So I just threw that out there. Wanted to know what you all thought about that. That was horrible to me. A lot more there. I know we'll get into it as weeks pass, but the El Salvador president and then that birthright citizenship question that he's sitting up there talking about to justify the slaves, and just made me think, okay, well, but Sally Hemington was born, the 13th Amendment wasn't signed. What about them? So thank you for taking my call.
Hey, there's something I need to tell you, man. Look, the main thing that I've been focused on. It's something that we gotta keep focused on. This is very important. In the last election, there was a radical departures from different ethnic groups. And you've seen Venezuelan, people from Cuba, these foreign countries, they supported Trump because they thought there was a good idea for border protection, right? But the thing that's critical, you're right about the 13th Amendment. It was 1865, it abolished slavery and involuntary servitude, but slavery and involuntary servitude didn't end in 1865, by the way.
Correct. That's
but
like Jim Crow.
The problem is that when there was this frontal attack on equal rights for Black folks in America, like affirmative action, they said is illegal. Diversity and inclusion that benefited white females, but very few minorities actually benefited, percentage-wise, but it's something we benefited from. The fact that we've had such a radical decline in Blacks in professional schools and things like that, we did not see the outpouring of support to defeat these racist, bigoted policies. And so I'm concerned about that, but the main thing for me is that I want to get back focused on these rights of African Americans.
Right.
We're losing our progress, racial progress we made over the last century. It's just going down the drain. And so just keep that in mind that they're trying to promote policies. Like you look at what they're doing, these law firms. They're trying to say law firms to support these bigoted and racial policies. Law firms was the last group profession to desegregate. Law firms are basically one of the most racist institutions in our society still today.
You're exactly right.
We have very few progress we've made over the last half century. And now we're trying to eliminate that. So don't forget about that. We made some progress. You made a great point. We made some progress, but it's been rescinded. And I don't think
right. And then I heard on the radio earlier this week before I go that the Big Ten schools are now going to fight back against Trump. They're forming a coalition, and they say when one school gets attacked on the DI measure, they're all going to defend each other. So that was a significant development. I think it was Thursday, but I heard it Friday morning on the way to work yesterday. So we could be proud of them at least. Now they're standing up. They got plenty of money. University of Michigan and Ohio State and all them. And then and I like to pose this to your guests: this attack on DEI and the schools that capitulate. How come we're not seeing that with a change on the basketball, football, and track fields? Yeah, you don't want to see that, do I? It'd be a big problem there, wouldn't it? Thanks,
Exactly.
Nate. Appreciate it.
Exactly. Yeah, I think you're absolutely right that no one's talking about that. And in fact, as many of you recall, when there was segregation, many of the top athletes were in the HBCUs because they couldn't get admitted to, the Power Five conferences. The SEC was one of the last conferences to desegregate. So I do want to just make one mention when we talk just about, the rule of law. And I think we really should applaud Judge Harvey Wilkerson, who's on the Fourth Circuit. He was appointed by President Reagan. And he basically indicated that what the administration was doing was a bridge too far as it relates to, Mr. Garcia being deported. The administration indicated that he was deported on accident. It wasn't appropriate, but are basically just saying, as your caller indicated, hey, there's nothing we can do. Let me just read a couple of paragraphs, if I could, Nathaniel, if you don't mind. But I think this is just really powerful. And again, this is someone who is a conservative judge that says this. He says, and this is in the context of this case, it is difficult in some cases to get to the very heart of the matter. But in this case, it is not hard at all. The government is asserting a right to stash away residents of this country in foreign prisons without the semblance of due process. That is the foundation of our constitutional order. Further, it claims in essence that because it has rid itself of custody, that there is nothing that can be done. This should be, and this is really important, this should be shocking not only to judges, but to the intuitive sense of liberty that Americans far removed from courthouses still hold dear. That's devastating. And then the next paragraph, just real briefly, the government asserts that Garcia is a terrorist and a member of MS-13. Perhaps, but not. Regardless, he is still entitled to due process. If the government is confident of its position, it should be assured that that position will prevail in proceeding to terminate the withholding of the removal order. And then it further just indicates that, moreover, the government has conceded that Garcia was wrongfully and mistakenly deported. Why then should it not make what was wrong right? I mean, that's just devastating. That just kind of goes to the whole point that we've been talking about, that, hey, regardless of where somebody sits, we're still a country of laws. You still have to give people due process. And, this judge, to his credit, says, hey, this is not easy this is easy to figure out. This is not hard at all. They wrongfully deported someone. They should make it right. And this goes to the very heart of our constitutional order.
Yeah. Okay, Carl, you got a quick question or comment for us today. Go ahead.
Yeah. Hi, I know it's quick. I wanted to say, as far as this, that the administration is concerned about not doing DEI in sports, well, it goes to show you that they think Black people are only good for manual labor. Anything that's physical, we ain't gonna stop them and stand in the way. But the other thing too is anything that we use our brains for, not that sports, you don't use your brains because you got to be able to know how to make moves and see the field. And it's an intelligent game too, but it's also very physical. They don't want to mess with Black folks doing physical stuff. Now, when it comes to Black folks using their brain and doing brain stuff, we can't have that, because then they're competing with the inadequate white folks that are out there not having the same brain power. So there's that. And then the other thing I wanted to mention is that people got to understand that Mr. Garcia is a canary in the coal mine. He is not necessarily what this is all about. And why is the canary in the coal mine is because they can't start with Black people first to start stripping our rights away, because they know there'll be a hell of a, and everybody would be like, what are we doing here? But the reason why they start with somebody like Mr. Garcia is because majority of the MAGA people were okay with getting rid of people in immigration. And some Black folks too were like, yeah, send them back. It's not us. We ain't got to worry about it. And so most of the time, Black folks are just looking at this as, it's just them. We've been born here. We've been here for centuries. Our DNA is here for the longest time. We don't have to worry about it. But unfortunately, that is just a layer they're getting rid of to use more laws to say we have to send Black people to these camps too as well. And Trump alluded to that and basically oppressor. So Black folks need to start getting wise about that. They're coming for us. And this is just one way to get to us. But the target is really to get to us. And that's what I had to say. Thank you.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. Now, as it relates to athletics, we have to really be careful. Nathaniel and I were, college athletes, and our children were as well. And, one of the challenges there is that, unfortunately, a lot of these schools aren't doing a great job making sure that, our student athletes are getting educated. So, we don't want a situation where it's only the student athletes that are getting admitted to these schools. We want to make sure that, a cross section of our communities are getting those opportunities. And I agree that it's something that we should be concerned about, the Garcia case. And in fact, Justice Sotomayor, alluded to the fact that, hey, this could lead to, Americans, being, sent overseas to prison. So irrespective of what somebody has done, they have a right to due process. You can't spirit somebody away in the middle of the night to a prison that doesn't adhere to our values. We have an Eighth Amendment against cruel and unusual punishment. The Constitution talks about, having due process, right to make sure that you understand why you're being charged and what is the basis of those particular charges. So, again, democracies are fragile, and it's important for all of us to continue to look, to continue to watch, to continue to speak out, to ensure our democracy, those hard gains, aren't lost on our watch.
Well, I'd like to thank our callers for calling in today. We've reached the time limitation of our show today, but keep a lookout for all these crazy changes that are occurring. We're seeing a frontal attack to democracy itself, imploding right before our very eyes. It tells us the importance of voting in each election, because now we see the significant consequences of people vote. Also, we see a lot of voter remorse now. I see these different groups of people are now realizing that it's about the main thing, that is that protection of rich, wealthy folks. Their interests are being protected while the masses of people are not. So stay tuned, folks, and we will be talking again of legal issues today, next Saturday. Thank you so much, Marlon, and our guests, and we look forward to talking to you next Saturday. Take care, everybody, and have a happy Easter. Make sure that you attend your church service and be thankful for the Lord for